This is so hard because I literally took my whole life and changed everyone's names and like made everyone anonymous so no one sues me at the end of the day and no one gets too offended. Like there's a lot of stuff I took out of this book. The writing process was actually very taxing and time consuming simply because I have archived and saved everything I've written since I was a little girl, like since I first started writing, like my first song. And so whether that be on flash drives, computers, like loose leaves of paper, like so many journals, I literally went through with everything I had, checked off what I had typed out. So while I was pregnant, I started chronicling everything that I had written and tried to get it in order as best as possible. And the writing process really was this decision to like not limit it just to storytelling, but also like journal entries and poetry, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. Like there's even like logs of conversations that have been made and names have been changed. So it's just the writing process was just like a shit show. Like I don't know what else to say. The real writer's block was, how deep am I gonna go? How much of her truth am I gonna tell? Like how controversial do I want to leave readers feeling at the end? Like, is the point to shock them or make them feel connected? And I had to make certain like choices in what I kept, took out, or added just to, make sure that the intentions for writing the book were, solid. Social issues like abortion and, date rape and, illegal substance abuse and just some of the underbelly of Hollywood. So it's hard to say that this book's going to be controversial, but it's definitely like a gnarly adventure story. This book is kind of 5 years in the making and it's finally published and everything. So I have like literally one hard copy of this book, and that was for me. Like there are no hard copies available at this time, and I think it just has to do with more of like fulfilling a goal or an accomplishment, but also the fact that it's on Kindle now. Like I don't want people to feel alone. I don't want them to feel that social stigma if they have a mental disorder. I want to look at this book as mental awareness, and I want people to come together after reading this and realize like they're not as fucked up as they think they are. Like this is just like labels that society gives you, and if you're focusing on the negative and not what's right with you, like there's no need to suffer. There's no need to try to kill yourself. Like suicide is never the answer. There's always people out there to listen to you. It's important for me to connect with people and to offer them a solution. Like that's why we watch TV, that's why we read, that's why we're on Instagram, that's what, you know what I mean? Like this is just another way for people to connect. Like why does an artist paint? Like why does a writer write? Why does a skateboarder like have to be in a half pipe or something? It's like there's just certain people out there, it's like you have to do it. Like you can't go a day without thinking about it, without doing it. And for me, like that's just kind of how art is for me. Like I have to do it or else I'll lose my mind. Like I have to be like, that's like my creative, like healthy outlet for things that go through my mind or something. I think anyone that writes can call themselves a writer. I mean, there's always this idea of like, when I do this or when I have this or when this happens, this is when I'm gonna be able to officially call myself a writer. But anyone can be a writer. Like anyone could publish a book on Kindle and be like, I'm a published author now. Like it doesn't take that much these days to do things that you feel like doing, It didn't really feel scary for me to be vulnerable. I mean, I've never had trouble being vulnerable other than when I didn't feel safe sharing something with someone that like I was afraid of someone's reaction. That's when I kind of have a hard time being vulnerable. But I mean, writing a book, like that's art. Like I didn't feel like afraid to be vulnerable, you know. It's not so much like being afraid of what people think of me so much as being afraid that it's gonna hurt someone's feelings or like, put someone off in a way that they're gonna be uncomfortable. But I mean, I guess that's part of the whole thing. When you read something or see something, it's gonna make you feel something.
What advice would you give to anyone who's going through suicidal feelings or mental health disorders right now?
The advice I would give anybody that is feeling suicidal or hopeless, for one, I learned in the mental hospital, you don't say you feel suicidal, you say you feel hopeless. Otherwise, they're going to keep putting that 3-day hold on you, and like all these people watch you. But like, my advice would just to be like, ask for help. Like, you don't have to follow through with any plan you have. You don't have to put yourself out of your misery. Like, the chances are you're gonna survive and live to see the next day, like Macy did. And it's just important to know that you're not alone and there's help out there. And don't be afraid to do the work. Like, if you're miserable now, like, why don't you be miserable doing something in the right direction? I don't know. It's a bitch. Like, being suicidal is a bitch. Like, that's all you can think about. That's all that sounds good. That's all that you deduce that that's like the only thing that's gonna make you feel better. And it's like, time and time again, like, you're gonna survive and you're still gonna wake up to see the next day, and it's just like so not worth it. And then like, the people that you're gonna leave behind, you have to think about, like, the only reason you're not getting what you need is because you're afraid to ask. And suicide is just like not the way to get that. It's like it's like when I was suicidal, it was all about like, I was just desperate for relief. Like, I didn't want to feel how I was feeling anymore. It wasn't like I want to die. It was like, I don't want to feel this way anymore, you know. And like, drugs weren't enough. Like, nothing was enough. I just wanted to sleep. Like, that was my thinking. Like, I just want to go to sleep, you know. Like, I didn't want to deal with anything. And enough hospital visits later and enough like, you know, I survived so many times. It's just like, obviously there's some reason I'm supposed to be here. And it's like, and it's not for me. I think it's for something bigger. I'd like to think, like, whatever gives you hope, like, you have to find what gives you hope. And but just, if you are feeling suicidal, like, I just know that I know what that feels like. And I've felt that way before too, and it's the worst feeling in the world. And you're not alone in feeling those ways, even though it feels lonely. It's like, you have to be willing to tell people how you're feeling. And if you can, tell someone that understands, you know. It doesn't need to be like your parents that like don't understand why the daughter or their son is like messed up. It's like, go find your people. Like, go find your people. They're out there. I think the catharsis will happen if someone's like, I read this part of your book and it made me feel this way, and like, just thank you for like touching on that or something. That might make me feel cathartic. But like, as of now, it's just like, I'm like in this like whirlwind of like, okay, it's happening, it's out there, like, what happens next, like the whole marketing side of it or whatever, just to let people know it's out there.
Do you feel like a role model to young women?
I don't feel like a role model to young women. I feel like a role model of what not to do for young women. I definitely don't feel like a shining example of like how you're supposed to do life. But I do feel like maybe for people that are suicidal, maybe I can be a role model because I'm still alive and I'm still here, and I don't feel that way anymore. And it's great. Like, I haven't felt suicidal in a long time. Like, if I had a date on like the last time I felt suicidal, it would have had to have been like 5 years ago, you know? And that's like maybe 6 years ago. And that's like a really good feeling to know that I want to be alive. And I know that in my heart, you know? But for young girls, probably not. I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I had a substance abuse problem for a long time. It was my coping mechanism for life. And rock bottom for me just like was beyond, like, I've been suicidal, so it wasn't desperation, it wasn't loneliness, it wasn't sadness, it wasn't heartbreak, it wasn't like demise. It was like looking at myself in the mirror after I tried to dye my hair bleach blonde and it was like fucking orange, and I was like, this shit is getting ridiculous. It got to the point where like nothing, absolutely nothing was going my way, And every time I tried to have like this idea of what I was gonna do next, and thinking I had like, all right, I have a step ahead finally, just like this one step ahead, like life would turn around and like push me 10 steps backwards. And I'm just like, how does this keep happening to me? This is like getting me nowhere. My own thinking is getting me nowhere. And I just got so sick of it, and it just got so ridiculous, and I was just like so out of options at that point, because like I couldn't even trust my own thinking anymore, and it was like getting me into these situations that were just like clownish, you know. That was my rock bottom, was also getting those glimpses that I was losing my mind too. Like my sense of reality was getting blurred with audio and visual hallucinations, and I would get these inclinations to do wild things that ended up just baffling me, because it happened in such a cunning way that by the time I was doing something, like had the realizations like, this looks insane to like the normal person, but to me this made sense. Like that scared me, you know. And I didn't want to lose control over my freedom of thought even. Like I wanted my mind back, and I knew I needed to get sober to get my mind back. And that was like the scariest thing to me. So for me, like writing, I had to pepper in a lot of like funny like perspectives on what was going on, because if there wasn't any humor in my book, I think it'd be really sad. And I didn't want a sad book. I had to throw in a sense of humor in there, not just because it's more entertaining that way, and it's just less like heavy, but because the content, some of the stuff is super heavy. But I didn't want readers to like read my book and be like, this is so fucking sad. Like I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. So I wanted them to like laugh with her. I wanted them to be like, oh my God, like this chick's wild, like ridiculous. Again, the word is ridiculous. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, no, please, no. What? Without a sense of humor in this life, I think like it's very cynical and bad and evil, and there's just too many things out there that can break your spirit. And I think your sense of humor is like the one way to really be able to overcome a lot of like challenges and stuff, because at the end of the day, nothing is really that big of a deal. And that's just a defense mechanism, really. Like it's just a way I've coped with life. It's just, I've always been a ham growing up. I've always loved making people laugh, and my kid loves making people laugh too. So I think there's a lot of value in laughter and just like being silly and not taking life so seriously, and just being able to like stay lighthearted about stuff, you know? Like it's like the only way I know how to calm down sometimes is just to like just be like, what the fuck, you know? It's just like that feeling of like, this is wild, like why? If my kid wanted to read this book, like, I mean, there's way worse stuff on YouTube that he's probably already I don't want to say that, but like I'm sure, I mean, it's out there. We have the internet, we have access to information. Like if he read my book, I would like, he'd have to wait till he's a certain age or something, but he can know that I have a wild imagination and live some of it, like whatever.